It was the silence in the room that wounded me more than the words they spoke. 3 members of the faculty committee, each with their eyes cast somewhere above my shoulder, leafed through my script as if it were a menu in a restaurant they didn't want to dine in. The tall woman at the end, Professor Klein, cleared her throat. Even then, the room seemed to tighten, the charged air making my palms sweat beneath the desk. She nodded to the older man in the center. Professor Weber, whose reputation for dispassion preceded him, flattened the front page of my script with a slow, steady hand. "This is imaginative," he said, "but far from what we expect for a graduating project. The narrative leaps. The dialogue is unnatural," he continued, his voice monotone, but each word tightening the knot inside my chest. "Your vision is ambitious." He said it as a rebuke, "but there is no cohesion." I nodded. My tongue felt thick, fixed behind my teeth. I'd come to the committee, trembling in my black sweater, my film proposal pressed crisp in a clear plastic binder. I'd rehearsed my explanation in the mirror for weeks, breaking down the metaphors in my film, describing the way Berlin's rain-washed nights mirrored the isolation of my protagonist. In my mind, I'd imagined their faces lighting up. Instead, Professor Klein avoided my gaze, fixing her eyes on the water stain on the ceiling. "This is simply not realistic," she said softly. "A film like this, with this budget and this philosophy? No. Perhaps you should consider revising your ambitions." Outside, my footsteps scraped the tiled floor of the corridor. The world felt deafening in its silence, the laughter leaking from nearby classrooms, the nudge of a cleaning cart, the low hum of campus life unconcerned with my small defeat. I stood by the window, gripping my binder. Outside, Berlin was spongy with cloud. Puddles glinting under silvered trees. I watched each raindrop strike the glass and wondered why I ever thought I could make a film that mattered. That night, I took the tram back home, rocking through districts pregnant with Monday night fatigue. My phone buzzed with raucous family messages. Like cousin Lena, 3 years younger and already taking the bar, had announced her engagement. My mother's reply trailed off in happy emojis. Then a message just to me. "Mama told me about the school thing. Maybe you should think about something stable. You could always take courses in IT or accounting." Then a string of laughing faces, the digital stand-in for a nudge to the ribs. My family would never ask me directly whether I'd failed. They preferred their mockery disguised as concern, their skepticism wrapped in suggestions for more reasonable paths. When I was a boy, they'd clapped for my puppet shows at birthdays. In adulthood, art became an inconvenience, something to be smoothed over at reunions. At our chattering family dinners, any mention of cinema was met with rolled eyes, exasperation. "Moritz, please, just get a real job." I went to bed that night listening to the slow drip of rain at my window, the sting of the faculty's dismissal settling somewhere behind my sternum. I pressed my face to a pillow that smelled faintly of old laundry. My resolve came not from any sudden inspiration, but simply from an unwillingness to sit in that silence, committee, family. The city itself, ever again. I was 24 when I found my first clunky camera at a neighborhood flea market. The vendor, a man in a threadbare coat, saw me pawing over it. "Works fine," he shouted, his breath circling in the icy air. €10, no pictures, only good vision. I negotiated him down by €2 and walked home with the heavy weight swinging in my backpack. I shot everything at first kiosk, vendors shuddering for the night, a drag queen roughing off her makeup under yellowed lights, an old man feeding crows by the canal. All the fragments of Berlin's quiet resilience. My friends drifted away, some to steady office jobs, others to cities with more sun and less edge. My family's disappointment calcified into quiet avoidance. At Christmas, my father would ask, "Still filming?" And when I said yes, He'd nod as if I'd confessed an illness. Money was always scarce. I paid the rent by piecing together part-time work, subtitling corporate videos, documenting weddings, sometimes holding a boom mic for groups of YouTube amateurs who paid me cash in greasy envelopes. I became adept at patching together existence. In the evenings, I wrote. I hoarded strange dialogue heard on trains, sketched out scenes with talkative shadows. I built a whole world in my battered notebooks. On days when I felt the weight most, I'd wander through Neukölln at dusk, letting the city fill my loneliness. The Indian groceries neon, the baker's spilled flour in the gutter, the murmured prayers seeping from a hidden mosque. Sometimes I'd sit by the canal, knees hugged to my chest, and watch the lights flicker on in apartment windows. Everyone seemed to have their place. I wondered why I couldn't fit into any of them. By 27, my savings could have been measured in coins. I considered giving up, briefly. But I saw something beautiful in the way the city wore its scars, and I wanted to tell that story. My first film was small, a lean 30 minutes, about a Turkish-German shop owner whose only friend was the stray cat that slept on his counter. I cast my neighbor, a retiree, and shot it in stolen moments around shifts at the bakery. I submitted it everywhere. German short film festivals, online contests, even to the public library's amateur night. I kept every rejection email, taught myself to read between the lines. Sometimes they wrote, "Not the right fit." Once, just a single sentence, "Overambitious, try again." By 30, I'd made 3 more micro-budget shorts. I rented a cold attic workspace with a leaky roof, crowd-funded gear, sent desperate emails to local actors, sometimes bartering for food or publicity. Every project felt like a new test, a chance to prove, if only to myself, that I hadn't wasted my 20s. Then came the break, if you could call it that. I met April, a Dutch sound designer with pale, nervous hands and coffee-stained notebooks. She'd just relocated for her boyfriend. They broke up the week she arrived. She worked temp shifts, splicing audio for commercial jingles, hated every minute, but loved capturing imperfect moments, the clack of high heels in station tunnels, the echo of a bicycle on wet cobblestones. We fit naturally, working in silence. We made a short 10-minute slice of winter called Asphalt, about 2 strangers brushing past each other at midnight and never looking back. April mixed the city into the soundscape, the schnapps bottles clinking in brown bags, the sudden arrival of a tram. We shot it in 5 nights, both of us chain-smoking between takes, running lines in the cold fog. We didn't expect much, but something in its rawness caught the eye of a small indie festival in Rotterdam. They gave us a slot in the late-night showcase. We took the slowest, cheapest bus we could find. At 2 a.m, I sat in a cramped theater, clutching April's hand, as our film flickered onto a worn screen. The audience was small, 5 people, a man snoring in the back, 2 teenage girls scrolling their phones. But someone clapped when it ended. That sound was more satisfying than any applause I'd ever known. Back in Berlin, something shifted, barely perceptible at first. A filmmaker in the Netherlands messaged us, could we make something together? A local arts foundation offered a tiny grant. April and I spent it on stronger coffee, new batteries, and the space heater for our attic. I lived mostly on doubt, but I kept moving. My family heard about none of this. I texted my mother on Sundays, the same evasive reassurances. Work is good. Berlin is cold. No, I haven't met anyone. She'd reply with photos. Lena's baby shower, cousin Victor's promotion. My parents at an all-inclusive on Lake Garda. Sometimes, in the quiet, I envied their world of manageable ambitions. My father called one night. I answered, instantly recognizing the weary resignation in his voice. "Moritz," he began, "your brother thinks you should come home for Oma's birthday. Everyone would like to see you. Maybe you could leave some of that filming just for a weekend." I agreed. Not because I wanted to, but because some part of me ached for their familiar derision, needed to remember the stakes if I failed. The day I traveled, Berlin was crisp, blue cold. My train ticket was partly paid for with returns on glass bottles I'd scavenged the week before. I rode with my nose pressed against the glass, watching flat meadows blur into the slow sprawl of Leipzig's suburbs. At home, my family greeted me with predictable curiosity. My mother squeezed my arms. "Too thin," she whispered. My brother handed me a beer, grinning. "The director returns. Are you still making YouTube videos?" At dinner, the table glowed with pork roast and jewel-red cabbage. Lena's husband asked about jobs in Berlin, flicking his eyes over my thrift store jacket. "So, Moritz, what do you do now?" he pressed, as if I were the last unclassified insect in a collection. I found my usual line. "I'm making films." There was a beat of silence. "Anyone we'd know?" My father snorted, not unkindly. "Not yet," I said, smiling. "Maybe one day." They laughed, the comfortable kind of laughter that says this version of me is a family story safe, tucked away as a punchline. By the end of dinner, they'd moved on. Lena's baby nap schedule was more urgent than my stubborn pursuit of failure. After Ulma's birthday, I returned to Berlin dazed, missing and resenting them in equal measure. In the nights that followed, April and I shaped our magnum opus from the scraps of our city.